Well, Charles,
How are you, Jason?
I'm well. I have no dramatic music or animation for you to close in on.
As yet. I mean, we could work on that another time.
We could work that out another time. But Charles, somebody's been robbing the hood.
Indeed. This is the world-famous John Hope Bryant, who, other than these academics you see, like Professor Gruber, and it's all the rage, if you're an MIT professor or an Ivy League professor, to have an 800-page resume. I mean, this guy's resume, in a previous episode, and we have links to it, we put it up. I think it's 20 pages long, and it's basically not much of it's right.
Charles, you've hired a bunch of people in your career, and I think you and I have discussed this before. I came to this conclusion on my own, operating a startup business for almost 20 years. What's the appropriate number of pages for a resume?
1. Yeah.
Any more is way too many.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And even if you've published, I mean, in my case, I've probably published or had published, I don't know, 400, 500, 600 articles. I mean, I'm not going to put that in my resume.
Include them as exhibits?
Yeah, why would I do that? I mean, there's Google, right? And most of the time, people have been looking you up before you even sit down with them.
Right.
So, yeah, this is actually quite a tragic story. And we've talked about the business model for charity fraud in the past, that you take a sympathetic bunch of likely real victims, and then you concoct a case for getting money for those victims, and you concoct arguments how you're actually going to take care of those victims and make sure that they're well looked after. And people are super gullible. I mean, you see that. I mean, I don't want to go on this particular riff, but you can pick a certain store. I mean, you know, there's kinds of stores where there's no chance, let's say it's clothing.
Yep.
No amount of money that you spend on clothing is going to make a certain type of person look great. And nonetheless, those people will go into a clothing store and they'll charge
Does
up.
this dress make me look fat? No, it's 800 cheeseburgers making you look fat.
Or too skinny. I mean, whatever. There's certain things, and people will they make really stupid decisions, including, as it turns out, supporting this fellow, John Hope Bryant. I think, one place to start with him, Jason, we were chatting about this a little bit before we got on air. Let's look at his Wikipedia page.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, you got it, I think, right there.
Yep.
So, Jason, I was actually born in Los Angeles, as you know, and I told my parents I didn't want to live there, so we left when I was 10 months old. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with that story? I couldn't talk at that point. But this guy was born, supposedly, February 6, 1966. And he's a financial literacy entrepreneur and businessman.
What does that mean?
It means sweet fuck all. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, if we go down the page a little bit to his early life. Now, mind you, Wikipedia, anybody can monkey with it, and this may be a malicious page. But here it says he was born in Los Angeles and raised primarily in Compton, which I just know from the lyric Straight Outta Compton.
I think it's not as bad as it once was, but that's...
It was bad in 1966.
Yeah, like drive-bys and stuff.
In 66, it was...
80s and 90s, it was surely terrible.
So it says here, I mean, and I think it's actually among one of the most, I don't know, how do you say it, truly charitable and good things for a couple to adopt a child. You're taking enormous risks doing it, but hats off to people who will do it. And
is he adopted?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's just something odd. It says here his parents are Juanita Smith and Johnny Will Smith, but his name is John Hope Bryant. So you tell me how that works. Maybe he changed his name, but maybe the mother was married previously to somebody named Bryant, and then she had a second marriage with Johnny Will Smith, and the guy said, I'm not going to take the second husband's name. I don't know, but there's a story there. And then how do you I mean, logistically, what I remember about Los Angeles, particularly at 8 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon time frame, traffic sucks. Yeah. I mean, how would you go from unless he's had a helicopter. I mean, how
Compton to Santa Monica, right?
Yeah, and how does that work?
I don't think they're busing students from Compton to Santa Monica. Santa Monica is one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the entire country, if not the world.
And it's not that easy to get to, right? I mean, I used to go out there. Actually, my parents tell me that they used to love to go there back in the 1800s when I was born.
Right.
But yeah, in fact, well, anyway. So Santa Monica High School, I don't think is a private school. So how do you go from you should go to public school out there in Compton, and how do you manage to transition your way into Santa Monica High School? And then, what about college?
Wait, can I show you this real quick?
Sure.
So here's Santa Monica High School. Let's take a look at what it would take to get there. Santa Monica High School directions, Compton.
Is there a street straight out of Compton?
We could just take a look. It's by
not
foot,
so
it's 6 hours and 52 minutes.
What?
That's walking. I mean, it's a
Oh.
33-minute drive, but that means 90-minute drive, because whatever it says here, you got to translate to Los Angeles time, which is ×3.
Is that, you're making that up, or that's in your
I'm
experience?
not making that up.
No, I'm not criticizing. I'm trying
That is my formula. And as a matter of fact, the last time I was in Los Angeles, which was about 5 years after I moved out, I remember I used that formula and I got to the dentist late. I said, wow. When I first started coming here, it was 2x Google Maps. While I was living, it was 3x Google Maps. And now I think you're getting close to 4x Google Maps. But that's the drive time calculated based on the distance and going the speed limit. We don't see any traffic stuff in here. So seriously, that's a 60-minute drive at least.
Yeah, each way. And in the
Yes.
case, I know from taking care of my kids, when he was young, he wasn't driving to Santa Monica High School himself in 9th grade. I mean, a parent would have to take you to the school, take you back. I mean, go back or go to
I
work.
don't think too many families in Compton have a car for every child in the family.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So, I mean, you start there, and then you say, and you go back into the Wikipedia, and you say, nothing about college. So, maybe he was a super gifted magician or
Oh,
something
you used
like
all
that.
the money on gas driving to Compton.
But how do you start a neighborhood candy store at age 10? I mean, what does that mean? 10-year-olds. He wasn't living in Santa Monica, I don't think, so he's living in Compton. And
Booger sugar count as candy?
his parents are saying, okay, sure, yeah, you're 10. You got nothing better to do on your way eventually to Santa. Why don't you start a candy store? I mean, don't worry. We don't think there's any chance that a 10-year-old boy would eat the inventory of a candy store. I mean, that's not going to happen.
Well, how can a 10-year-old kid run a store of any kind?
I understand. Yeah, exactly. When are the people coming over to buy the candy? Is it before elementary school, after? I mean, and nothing about college. And then all of a sudden, in 1992, when he's 26 years old, he decides, bingo, I'm going to devote myself to charity after the Rodney King riots, when Los Angeles is burning. And the bankers are worried that literally Los Angeles will be burned down. And they want to sort of tamp down on the tension. And the bankers look at this and say, okay, here's this kid, 26 26 if you were a superstar in banking at age 26.
Like Charles Ortel.
No, I don't think lending. In superstar in lending at age 26, you're sitting there and the client walks in and you're saying, oh, you'd like a mortgage. Okay. Would you like the toaster package, or would you like this thing? Can I
get you a coffee?
Can I park your car?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know anything about anything at age 26 if you're a real banker, because you don't have enough experience. You haven't been through a credit cycle. You haven't been defrauded yet. There are all kinds of problems. So the notion that this guy with no college degree that we know of, now maybe he went to a college, maybe he went to, there are no online universities back then, so maybe he went somewhere else, maybe he is one of those rare people who didn't need to go to college, which, Bill Gates didn't go to college, or he dropped out of college. It's possible, but, the way I look at this kind of stuff is, on the different factors of concern, you have a spectrum, and you think about the 8 or 10 or 12 things about somebody before you
don't make sense.
And okay, this one doesn't make sense, and that one doesn't make sense. This one is off the charts. I'll hire him.
Yeah.
It's like, and so he has no college degree that we know of. We know nothing of his extracurricular activities. If he went to college, he would have graduated in '88. We know nothing about his career from '88 to '92, but I happen to know, because I was working actively in that time frame, how difficult that period was. '89, we had a financial crash involving United Airlines, which I actually got involved trying to rescue after a crash.
A financial crisis.
Financial crisis. They tried to do a leveraged buyout of United Airlines, and it blew up, and the deal fell apart, and we had a market crash. And my firm was called on to try to put that deal back together, and I was the point person trying to do that. So I remember it vividly. Then in '90, we had Saddam Hussein going into Kuwait in August of 1990, and that tanked. And, people said, "Wow!" I mean, our military. People forget our military had not conducted a successful, gigantic operation since before Vietnam. And so the markets looked at this and said, well, wait a minute, what are we going to do here? We're going to liberate Kuwait. We couldn't do it in Vietnam. And, there's some bad actors. How are we going to put a coalition together involving, the Soviet Union still was falling apart at that point. And of course you have the Middle East tensions and all that stuff.
To what extent?
So I just finished the thought. So the market looked at that, the investors in the market, and they didn't view it as a political thing. They said, my God, the risks in this are huge. We got no more deals. I remember vividly, and I was a partner at this firm, and it's my first full year as a partner, and thinking this is great. I get to see the inside, how profitable this firm is, and everything's looking really good. I'm looking at a big payday in July, and then in August, this thing happens. And just like a third of our backlog disappeared in one day.
Wow.
Because people said, I'm not doing that leverage deal, I'm not doing this deal, I'm not doing that financing. So and then we had all the uncertainty about what might happen. They do put the coalition together, but then, then George W. Bush, born with his silver platter in his mouth, goes from a 90% approval rating in 91 to losing out to Bill Clinton, and so this is not an environment where the markets are roaring upwards yet, and it's not an environment where somebody with this kind of suspect background in terms of education and career and identity, meaning that we don't really even know who he is necessarily, could have amassed a fortune legitimately. I mean, it's just highly suspicious, and it's in the category, if you hear something that sounds too good to be true,
Probably
it
is.
ain't true.
Yeah.
That could be my second law. But
So to what extent, if any, do you think, Charles, that the excursion into Kuwait was demonstrated or was intended to demonstrate the United States' ability to successfully conduct a large military campaign, which they've been in the business of doing ever since then?
I mean, going back to that, I think that we absolutely had to do it. I mean, what Hussein was doing was die. I actually, it's name dropping a little bit, and a friend of mine, I just have to have a shout out, it's somewhat poignant. Last week, my father's longtime girlfriend passed away at the age of almost 89. And almost at the same moment, a dear friend of mine who was in the royal family of Kuwait passed away almost like within hours.
Wow.
And because of the second person, Prince Fahd al-Sabah, who I've known since I think the early 80s, maybe 90s, he arranged for me to go to Kuwait several times and meet with members of his family, who were so grateful to what the United States did. I mean, even then, we're talking 2008 and 9 when I went back to Kuwait, and 10. Even then, they couldn't believe, the sacrifice that we went through and the fact that we didn't just keep Kuwait. We said, we'll liberate you, and there you go.
Is that him?
No, Fahd. He's got to be pushing in his 80s at this point.
I thought he was dead.
I mean, I'm just saying at the point that he died. It wouldn't be these guys are all young. He was quite controversial, this fellow. He was head of the Kuwait Investment Fund, and he was unfairly, in my opinion, accused of, when that fund lost tens of billions of dollars, he was unfairly accused of financial improprieties, and he was hounded. He had to flee Kuwait.
Wow.
And he spent his time in the Bahamas, which is how I met him.
Huh.
Anyway, so what we like to do in this show, we've been focusing on many other aspects of the Clinton Foundation. This is, I think, our 185th show, is it, or fourth?
184.
184th show. So the question of, and there's your great playlist.
Ah, it's ours.
But it really is very handy for people who are just getting acquainted with what we've done in the past. we had spent enough time at the inception of our investigation to realize that there's so many different facets to this thing that you can't just sit here and only focus on the skin or the eye or the limb or the foot or whatever. You have to look at it multiple different ways, multiple different perspectives. And actually, as bad as the John Hope Bryant story is, and we're going to show you just how bad it is, again, remind you how bad it is, it's less than 1% of the Clinton Foundation fraud. But it's the same pattern and practice of creating a fake charity, that sounds too good to be true, and then all the dumbasses around the world and all the grifters around the world who want to convince somebody to send somebody else's money towards the charity, knowing that they're going to hive off a piece of it, start promoting it. And you start promoting, and next thing you know, the guy's on CNBC, and he's got a 20-page resume alleging, among other things, that he is the only African-American Teutonic Knight on the planet. We covered that in the previous.
Teutonic?
German. He can't just say German. He's got to say it's Teutonic.
But wasn't there a weird kind of other name to the knighthood that he had?
Yeah, I forget the name of it, but we have it in the we have a link to the previous show of September 15th, I think it was, this year, where we go into all that. You can look it up. But, first of all, there are no knights in Germany. Secondly, no legitimate knights in Germany. Secondly, the family whose name he claims he got a knighthood from is the first, according to research, is the first German family during World War II or before World War II to embrace Adolf Hitler. So,
Right.
it's the kind of thing where somebody calls up and says, listen, the Gambino family would like to give you the honorary knighthood of Greenwich Village. It comes with it nothing at all, except maybe it makes the Gambino Foundation look good. You probably turn that one down, The Adolf Hitler Vegetarian Artist Society, you're not going to take an award from that. So, but this guy does,
Yeah. Well, I wish I could remember what kind of knight he was, but anyway. Oh, you know what? We need to bring up the slides, Charles. See, it's my brain is not mentally aligned to be closing in just yet. I'm so used to Sunday with Charles.
Well, shall we, do you want to cover the Epstein strangulation thing beforehand or at the end of it?
Well, yeah, sure. Let's talk about it. That was interesting. I saw an interview with the coroner, Michael Baden, who had been hired by Jeffrey Epstein's brother because he didn't believe what the medical examiner was saying. It wasn't really news to me. I did a show with Cyril Wecht a couple weeks ago, and Dr. Wecht said not only the same thing, he also pointed out a number of procedural anomalies with how the autopsies were done. Like the medical examiner wasn't present for the autopsy, didn't properly sign it. People have to go back, search the playlist or just the video list there on Crowdsource the Truth to see that Cyril Wecht interview. But I've been meaning to call the doctor all day and ask him what he thinks about his friend and colleague coming right out and saying there's strong evidence that it was not a hanging.
Yeah, the thing about this, we have put up in the past the FBI's domestic investigation guide, which I think is various editions of it. They redo it every 2-3 years or something like that. And the guide, the unclassified version, runs to 900 pages, and it goes on and on. In this case, we do that. In another case, we do this. And is that just for show?
Yes.
Is that get somebody to write a nice big book about what we might do when we investigate something?
Yeah.
In reality, we have, we're watching porn, we're creating
send
porn.
a text to your girlfriend, have sex with the secretary, have sex with the other secretary.
And the mistress and the other mistress, and for good, it's just, we laugh about it, and many, that we shouldn't take the FBI for granted. They actually do a lot of good work, but...
you say that, but I haven't seen it at all.
Well, I don't know. I believe they do good work, but this latest story, is this in actually the New York Times?
Yeah, this just came out
then
today.
It's definitely wrong. But it originally was reported on Fox and Friends, I think.
Yeah, the interview with Baden was on Fox. I saw that on video. But now, there'll be a day of talking about it, and then it'll go back. This story is already firmly entrenched in the category of anybody who's not, watching Crowdsource the Truth or paying attention to the type of stuff that we talk about. I mean, this is like putting out an article in the New York Times that said, "Oh, breakthrough! Lee Harvey Oswald
That's
maybe
right.
didn't do it." Everybody would be like, "Okay, what else?" They don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a little too
But-
late.
And the use, I know you dwell on this, but the use that the Times would think that they have enough standing left or remaining standing, shreds of standing left, to start the trope of, other people who disagree with us are spreading conspiracy theories, but, we're only the news that's fit to print. That's us, the New York Times. We get, everything right, and anybody who disagrees with us is a conspiracy theorist. They don't have... the emperor is wearing no clothes on that one.
Yeah. And Luke Rudkowski and Jeff Berwick went to Epstein Island the other day. It was interesting. I don't know that it revealed very much in terms of news, and I think it was a questionable thing for them to do, because even though Epstein is a scumbag and either dead or missing or whatever, it's still trespassing. Somebody owns that after he's dead.
The estate does, yeah.
So, right. So just going there, I mean, they've committed a crime. They might be in trouble, and they put it on video. It wasn't that smart.
Well, except they got hundreds of thousands of views and maybe monetized it, but...
That's today. Let's see if they get a knock on the door next week. I mean, I like Luke. I think it was a bold thing to do, and it's definitely promoting his channel and keeping some attention on Epstein. But I think you got to be pretty careful when it comes to deliberately breaking the law when you're trying to be a journalist, particularly somebody who a lot of people like. Luke Rudkowski uncovers a lot of stuff that a lot of people would like him to stop uncovering. I don't think it's a good idea to give them an excuse to...
Well, I think the corollary of that is it's not a good idea to break the law unless you're the Clintons, the Obamas, the Bushes, a former president. Then it's okay. I mean, you're above the law. You do what you want.
Exactly.
Unless you're Trump, in which case, to just get you for whatever.
That's a whole other thing that's quite upsetting. But so do you want to get into the
I think so.
slides,
I think so.
Charles?
So
Okay.
today what we're going to do, and for those people who have not watched the previous episode on John Hope Bryant, we are not going to regurgitate all the findings there, where we lay out what I think is a definitive case that his main charity, Operation Hope, is nothing other than a massive fraud.
Wouldn't be on this show if it was otherwise.
So here I equate Bill Clinton, Terry McAuliffe, and John Hope Bryant. I put them in the same sentence describing all of them as grifters. And people are going to say, how can you call the former president a grifter? Watch the other 183 shows and I'll get back to you. How could you say that about the former governor of Virginia? Because he was the lead outside director, trustee of the Clinton Foundation from 2000 to 2013, when the Clinton Foundation was nothing more than it was an emerald cookbook of fraud. Let's see if we can whip up this type of fraud. Now let's try that fraud. What about this fraud? How about that fraud? And Terry McAuliffe, has a long, of the various people who've tried to make money in the private sector, Terry McAuliffe arguably has done more of that. The kind of scrutiny that people want to give to Donald Trump for his, how did he come by his wealth? He was born, his parents gave it to him.
I thought it was renting hotel rooms to Mike Pence. You got to throw him in jail for that.
That's right. But Terry McAuliffe, I mean, in the old days, when, for example, when I would work with people, we raise money for a fund, you have to go through the exercise of laying out every deal that you've worked on and to show people how much money did you raise, what did you say you were going to do with it, what really happened, what was the rate of return on the investment, what went wrong, what went right, what lessons did you learn? You have to go through all of that. To do that with Terry McAuliffe, if you had a real FBI, I mean, you would be saying, Terry, look, we're going to go through an exercise that's going to be really painful. It's called, how many years is Terry McAuliffe going to spend in jail? Because it's going to be a long period of time. And, so you would have to go through, here's a guy, again, started out with no wealth, was a lawyer, got involved with politics, and now he has enough money by 1998-9 timeframe, enough money to lend Bill and Hillary Clinton money to buy that house in Chappaqua when no bank in America would do it.
Wasn't he rich from...
Stealing, probably,
Yeah.
for grifting. And there are books and stories about how what he would do is he would get a politician elected who would have influence or ability to link him into these public sector unions. They would have pension funds. He would convince the pension fund to invest in his deals. He would cut deals that were not really fair, and those deals might work out, and he made a lot of money doing that kind of stuff. If you have, a pension, but typically these union pension plans in the past they would be milked.
Yeah, people love to rob the pension, huh?
It was. I mean, it is such a crime. When you go through, when you loot a pension plan, I mean, you are really asking, and I'm not saying that Terry McAuliffe looted a specific pension plan, but if you had tough people who want to say, well, Donald Trump's rate of net worth is not really 10 billion, it's whatever it is, it's less than that. Donald Trump lost money in Atlantic City.
So
I mean,
what?
Terry McAuliffe has lost a lot of money on projects and made money. I've lost money on projects and made money on projects. That's what happens in business, unless, of course, you're Bill Clinton or Barack Obama. When you get out of office, it's like, how would you like this gift? What about this gift? What about this above market speech or book or a chance to invest in this fund and guaranteed make money? So when you look at somebody's record, one would really need to dig not only into Terry McAuliffe's deal-making record and how did he get these opportunities to invest, but very specifically at what exactly was he doing to try to discharge his duties of care, loyalty, and obedience to the Clinton Foundation when he was on the board as the most financially literate person and perhaps acquainted with corporate law person on that board.
Can you tell what this pin is?
I don't know. It's weird. He's got the purple resistance tie, though.
Exactly.
Is that a recent picture?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
So if
2020.
Yeah, they like to throw him around as somebody who might run.
They're just trying to find all the most corrupt people who are in business with the Clintons to run?
I mean, it really is. We take a brief sidestep here. I mean, we think about the 2020 nominees. Somebody contacted me to do a radio interview yesterday, which I did, or an internet radio interview. And I was always thinking way back when that, if you're going to run for president, you should have some pretty strong credentials, some reasons to think that you might win, because it's such a grueling process.
You mean outside of your criminal activity?
Outside of your, I'm running for president because if I don't, I'm going to jail.
Right.
But you look at this collection of, Republicans are the same, angry scolds. These are people who, in the main, most of them, whether they're on the Republican challengers or the Democrat, these are people who are starting out now before they are in power, scolding you. You're deplorable. You're too rich. We're going to take your money away. If we don't do that, we're going to take your guns away. We're going to take your choices away. We're going to do this to you and that to you, and we're going to raise your taxes to such high levels. Bernie Sanders, we're going to tax you at more than 100% of your income.
Nice.
It's like it's.
Yeah,
I may not
suggested that, right?
Yeah, I may not be the most successful dating person, but even I understand that on our first date, you don't start out and say, you know what? You're too fat, you're ugly, I'm going to take your shit. I want a prenuptial agreement.
When can we go out again?
And that's just person after person, that's what they're doing here. And they're not even past the agreeing to meet at a restaurant stage here. They're still, whether it's the crazy waving arm people, Beto and what's her name, Warren, getting up there. It's just embarrassing. And similarly, and I go back to this, I'm not saying, and please understand, I am not saying that you should have to be a certain ethnicity or religion or height or weight or whatever.
Brain power.
Not even saying that. I mean, because there's street smarts or whatever. I look for, when I was in the business of hiring for companies and investment firms, I would look for a consistent pattern of accomplishment where people took risks, may have failed, but learned from their mistakes and grew. And to see that over a long period, like not 2 years. You don't want somebody who says, you know what? I was in the Illinois State Senate for a week, and I should be president of the United States. Or in the case of Donald Trump, people say, well, how could you take a risk on him? His pattern and practice, with a lot of advantages, of tackling some of the most complex development projects out there against ruthless competitors and winning over decades in real estate, and then getting into the entertainment business with no real credentials and winning at that, you can't say it's all because his father was rich.
No, it's definitely not.
I mean, he was up against people who were far richer than their family, and he did pretty well. And it's a consistent pattern of practice of accomplishment. Now,
I wish he would stop with this ridiculous makeup. It never looks
Yeah, I know they call him on Twitter. I'm sorry for saying this. I saw some Twitter comment on my page where they referred to him as that orange fuckwit.
I just don't understand why he wants that. Why not just go one day without that?
Maybe his secret is when my eldest child was very young, orange the kid turned orange, and literally orange, and we were all like, "What's going on? Is it a liver problem? Is it this problem? Is it that problem?" Took the child to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, you don't understand. Baby
Trumpism."
No, baby food. One of the ways then that they made baby food, or that paste baby food, is they ground up a lot of carrots. There's a large amount of carrots in it. When you eat a lot of carrots, you turn orange.
Really?
Yeah, that's what we had good doctors, and that's what they said. We didn't go to like the quack.
The other thing that's happening is I think a lot of photographers will take a picture of President Trump, and then you don't get. Like, if you saw him, I don't think he would look this orange. I think they're boosting the saturation to make him look orange, because sometimes when I use him in pictures, little secret, I take the saturation down a little bit. So he doesn't look so orange.
Yeah. But anyway, so back perhaps on the slides. Or the first slide.
We're very chatty today.
Before we get into the body of the slides, I would just like to remind people. I mentioned that we had an appointment yesterday to go to something, and I ended up being the one who actually went to it. And
but you're definitely not upset at me that I didn't.
I'm not in the slightest upset. No. I'm just honestly not at the slightest. But I think I can reveal that I went and listened to Steve Bannon give a very interesting, captivating explanation of how he saw the world, the threat of impeachment, what he sees coming. And it's a very scary prognostication. He was describing current conditions. In his mind, there is a significant probability that we could have simultaneously a world war and civil wars at the same time.
Jeez.
And he was giving special focus on Hong Kong, and there are protests now in many countries around the world. Chile has just canceled the summit, whatever the name of that summit is, where Trump was going to sign a deal with Xi. That's off the table now. It's been canceled.
Wow. Because of protests in Chile?
Yeah, there's some billionaire who runs Chile, and the young people are upset and in the streets rioting, millions of people. So he was talking about all that. There's a big election in Taiwan apparently in January that is concerning, and he's got a new movie which we watched a new documentary about Huawei, and it was very interesting, very sobering to think about it. But
what does he say? How Huawei is like China's Google?
No, far worse. The real story about Huawei that I've read elsewhere, and I'm talking to, I know Gordon Chang and other people like that who tell me, but I check for myself. The idea that in China, this company would, be like John O'Brien, and out of nowhere, some company with no help
becomes the biggest cell phone
is going to dominate Nokia and Motorola, Apple, Samsung, without any government help. Yeah, right. That's not the case.
So Huawei is the Chinese government.
Well, it's cleverer than that. It's apparently what it is. It's a company that I think remains private, and nobody exactly knows who owns it, and it's operating out of China. So there's even with well-run public companies, you have to doubt the veracity of their financial statements. So we simply don't really know where the money came from. But the movie suggests that it's a government, it's a Communist Party financed venture, looking ahead to 2025 and afterwards to try, as our Norwegian friend says, to impose 5G on us as a spying mechanism masquerading as telephony. It's a tracking system. It is not.
It's already that.
With ancillary, I know, but this one apparently is even more diabolical, this level. So it was an interesting film. And he said that in 2018, basically the people sat on their hands and got their asses kicked. And he had given a speech preceding year before the election where he warned people that you're going to get your ass kicked, and then Nancy Pelosi is going to take over in the House, and she's going to the plot to nullify the 2016 election is going to move into impeachment overdrive. And
he's right.
He's absolutely right. And so that's one of the impetuses for me thinking that we should go back and do this show now twice a week, because we've got a period here that's very important. The various charities, in the beginning, they could try the argument that how are we to know, that there's a problem with the Clinton Foundation? I mean, nobody's told us before. We had Simpson Thacher take a look at it, BKD took a look at it, Price Waterhouse, Cohen Resnick, they all told us it was fine. You can't say that anymore. You have, there are large, not just the stories we've done together and others, a large number of people, starting with Peter Schweitzer and Daniel Halper, and around the world, many different people have complained about the main Clinton charity, and the books and records don't look right, and the legal filings are wrong, and then you start thinking about the affiliates and all this stuff. And so an accounting firm that finds itself today trying to review the books and records of the main Clinton Foundation and work with that foundation to get its tax filings. Typically, you should have one accounting firm on a big charity help you do the tax filings, federal, state, and foreign, and a different accounting firm do the audit, because there are good reasons to stress test. That's best practice for the big firms, and of course, it's helps sell accounting services. So the people who write the best practice manuals for the accounting firms say, yeah, you really should hire as many accountants as possible. But,
right.
But honestly, it is a smart thing to do. They have to get that work together, and what that means is right now, today it's October 30th here in America, in New York, and you have to get your filings in, if you're a US firm, latest November 15th, 2019.
I just thought of the perfect Halloween costume for you, Charles.
What's that?
Truman the Tiger.
Yeah,
You should have come
no.
dressed as Truman.
No, that's not happening.
Yeah.
But so you have to get those filings in. Now, what does that mean? If you are a real version of the Clinton Foundation as opposed to its fraudulent alter ego, what you would be doing is you'd be saying, hang on, this time it's real. I better check and make sure that the Clinton Foundation has legal authority to do work outside of Little Rock. And you discover it doesn't. So how do I correct that? Well, maybe I can amend my articles of incorporation, but I should probably go talk to the IRS. And the IRS says, F you, we're going to put you out of business. And you start going into this tailspin of figuring out, what the hell do I do? Now, if you were legitimate, which the Clinton Foundation, I believe, is not, what you would be doing is, if you had operations in, let's say, 40 countries, each one of those countries, you have to ask the question, how did I organize myself in that country? Did I check the laws of that country? And with Clinton's? Of course not. And charity law, in some of these countries, the poor countries especially, if you're going to be involved distributing medicine inside a poor country, or this country for that matter, as a foreign charity, you got to make sure that you don't run afoul of the health regulations, of the customs regulations. It may be that certain charities say, certain countries say, well, you're a charity in America, and we'll let you be a charity inside Tanzania, but if you want to bring this medicine in and distribute it for free, you've got to pay an excise tax or an import tax on the value of the medicine. And if you don't want to do that, you have to file special paperwork. And where is all that stuff? And you're accounting for it, let's say picking on Tanzania, using Tanzanian shillings. And those are different than American dollars, very different. And the financial statements of an entity in Tanzania, to translate those financial statements into American dollars is something that an accounting firm can do for you if you can't do it, but it's not a simple work. I mean, you've got to keep track of all your expenses, revenues and expenses. You've got to apply real exchange rates to those flows during the year and cash flows. And then you got to think through your assets and liabilities, including your contingent liabilities, and translate them at the actual exchange rates. And sometimes there are differences, and you got to go through all this kind of stuff. And so it's by way of saying, if this were a real well-run charity, the Clinton Foundation, you'd be sitting there under a warehouse full of paper, trying to make sure that you accurately reported how you got money from wherever their head office is deemed to be, to this country, and then back from that country. And did you register all the bank accounts? Did you account for every part of the Clinton Foundation? Of course they didn't. And so now you're sitting in a position as any accounting firm today that would walk into the jaws of death assignment of trying to complete a financial statement that will pass muster eventually is probably has a very small net worth or some way of limiting its risk, because this is such a dangerous project. I mean, you look at this,
It'd kill the company.
You could kill the company and the reputation. And actually, when you get into it, when you talk to the accountants, we've mentioned in the past, and I haven't provided the links just because there's a lot of them. The first question that a real certified public accountant asks is,
"Where are your tigers?"
No, do I want this assignment in the first place? That's the first question they ask. They're trained. They are risk-averse people. They were good. They look at this and they say, if I screw up, I don't want to be Arthur Andersen, because the public relies on my good name, and they may check it less than they should. And so I've got to decide: is somebody, hypothetically, let's say somebody who was Attorney General of Arkansas, Governor of Arkansas, Rhodes Scholar, graduate of Yale Law School, went in to be President of the United States for 2 years and had to surrender his Arkansas and Supreme Court law licenses for lying under oath in a deposition and obstructing justice into the investigation. Is that the type of person that I want to represent as an accounting firm who already has done this and had to give away all this stuff and is legendary for basically attempting to dominate anything associated with his name? Do I want to do that when the entity in question that I'm supposed to audit is a public charity, and that public charity cannot, in fact, legally be dominated by one person or family? Is that something I should do? And the answer, any sensible person would say, heck no. Hell no. And so now you're sitting, it's October 30th, you got to get this thing signed and filed in all these different places, the audit. And it's got to fairly present results for 2018 consistent with 2017. It's got to do so on a worldwide consolidated basis. In other words, you can't say, I've got this massive problem, I'm just picking on a country, let's say in India, where I may be rated for my role in providing adulterated generic drugs to African countries where people died, and people in India are getting wise to this, and they've sent constables into my offices there, and they're trying to get to the bottom. I think what I'll do this year is I'll just leave India out. I'll say, here's the results of everything.
Just don't mention it?
Oh yeah, India. I don't want India. That's a bad word. I can't talk about India. Who brought up the word India? Why would you think I was in India?
Did you see this from yesterday? The Singh brothers are apparently trading barbs, blaming each other. That doesn't bode well for other people who might not want them to rat on them if they're ratting on each other.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's just great.
There's still been no reporting on this whatsoever in the United States. This is all, I don't know, what is the Economic Times? Is that British?
No, the Economic Times is a very big newspaper so it's like the Wall Street Journal in India.
In India?
Yeah. People don't scoff. The largest English language newspaper in the world is in India.
I'm just saying, nobody in the United States is reporting about this because I think they don't want anybody to know about it.
Yeah, it's bad. Here we have, one of the reasons people don't want to focus upon this is that the United States, following George W. Bush's lead, we decided that we would, give tens of billions of dollars, almost, I think, $65 billion or so, into something called the Global Fund and PEPFAR, two separate entities, one in America, one in Geneva, and that we would let these entities purchase drugs that would then be distributed to poor countries that didn't have the health infrastructure to make sure those drugs were either checked and distributed properly. And the Singh brothers and the people in Ranbaxy saw through all that and saw it as a great grifting opportunity. And it's not enough to say, at the end of the day, well, it was the Singhs who were bad and we didn't screw up. No, America screwed up too. We shouldn't have done this. The nations that gave the money, we should have been on this long ago. And it wasn't until 2007, on February 14th, 2007, the FBI, then under Robert Mueller, decided to raid Ranbaxy on February 14th, 2007.
In India or
in America?
Where were
in
they
New Jersey.
located?
And their regional offices were, their head offices were in New Jersey. And it took them until May 9th, 2013 to, in theory, tag Ranbaxy with $500 million of problems. But query, did they get the whole ball of wax? Did they let Ranbaxy off too light? Is the question. And along the way, people rightly around the world are going to say, thanks for nothing. Thanks for the money could have gone a lot better to other projects. And by the way, thanks for sending us drugs that were adulterated. What's that all about?
So why did this Japanese company buy it if it's such a disaster?
Well, the arguments back then is similar to the China argument. I've had multiple people when I was in the business of listening to investment ideas from other people. They would come into my office and they'd say, "We got a great idea. This is a world beater. Simple."
I wish I was there just watching that. Sure.
Simple. Look, we got this company over here. It's got this great product, and rather than focus on America, we're going to focus on 2 countries, just 2 countries, and we're going to go from nothing to 10 billion in sales, and we'll make 4 billion in profits. What are those countries? China and India.
Get out of my office.
Exactly. It's like, get the fuck out of here. I got no business, no experience, no capital. I haven't finished the product. It's 90% done. That was the other great one. It's always 90% done.
You can't abuse it, Charles, but there's been 1 or 2 get out of my offices that I just will treasure forever. You can't do it all the time.
It's
but when done properly.
It's right. Get the fuck out of here. But anyway,
Okay.
so this deadline is approaching, and we're now going to be concentrating on what the many developments around the Clinton Foundation fraud and the link to the Hillary Clinton email investigation, the link to the deep state attack on the deep state, which incidentally Bannon says we shouldn't be talking about a deep state, but he thinks that it's deeper than that. It's a bigger problem than that. It's just basically corruption. But I'm not sure I agree with him on that one.
Getting into semantics now.
I know. But here we are. We're looking forward to 15 November. Boy, that's a great typo. The filing deadline is not 15 November 2109. It's 2009.
That would give them plenty of time.
We got plenty. We'll get that in.
We're going to wait that out.
Yeah, we'll get that in. By then there'll be, America will be like Atlantis.
Will be on the moon.
We'll be Atlantis. Yeah. Everybody living on Pluto. Yeah, sorry about that typo.
That's
anyway,
okay.
So quickly, for those of us joining for the first time, this is an exercise. That's working, frankly. Today we are going to take you through some new stuff that came out of a fresh look at John Hope Bryant's public filings by people who are very actively engaged. We're not just listening, and thank you for these leads that we got today. These are people who looked at this and said, "I'm not putting up with this. This may be okay for you guys. I am going to shut this down. I am going to make the authorities know about this. I'm going to make my friends know about this. I'm going to spread the word about this." And thank you for that. Thanks for taking the time and effort to look through these materials, to add to these materials, and to do your best as a group here to police these frauds, which the policemen don't want to seem to go after because it would seem maybe they're involved in them. So this is an approach here where we do give you information, but it's grounded in fact. We give you opportunities to look at the links and check for yourself. We appreciate comments, constructive comments, and we get them on a daily basis because we've been at this now for a while. We talked about the playlist already, and I think without any further ado, we might jump right into the slides.
But don't we want to remind people to send you messages on Twitter and to visit charlesortel.com and also to follow both Charles and myself at Charles Ortel on Twitter.
I think that's...
And Crowdsource the Truth, at CS the Truth. Actually, I rarely do remind people to follow us on Twitter, but it's a good idea because if anything happens to the YouTube channel, Twitter is a good backup for finding information about where updates will be.
And that I would say, in my case, I'm now getting, sometimes I'll go for a day without looking at Twitter or longer, but in most cases, I definitely check Twitter. I checked Zero Hedge first, and then I check Twitter, because I'm getting a lot of people.
Not TruePundit.com? After that.
After that, yes.
Yeah.
I like TruePundit, but I mean but Twitter. The advantage of Twitter, it's in a bigger.
Mike is all over Twitter. You're getting your TruePundit feeds right in there.
Yeah, I do get that. I do. I'm just saying, but so I get in Twitter though. There are a large number of people who send me comments or whatever.
DMs.
Well, DMs.
Or tweet at you.
Tweet at me with it, and it's very useful stuff. I mean, so I really appreciate that. Thanks to everybody who's doing that. I want to start by addressing what I like to refer to as a canard, which is, people will say to you, these supposed experts. I've given a few speeches where there was some high and mighty lawyer saying, oh, fraud is very tough to prove and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah. Well, I said, Mr. Lawyer, can I just, without asking too many probing questions, are you a corporate lawyer? Yes. Uh-huh. How much experience do you have with charity frauds? None. Okay, right. You could sit down now. So, so it is true.
If you're in your office.
No, if you are talking about a corporate fraud, okay, the corporate world is a world where AOC may not want to admit this, and Bernie may not want to admit this. Profit is not a dirty word in the corporate world. It is the essence of what people are trying to do. They're trying to make a profit. So when you think about an investment, you should be thinking about angles. You should be thinking about, how is somebody making money off your money? How is this business going to make money against the competition? Profit is what people are looking to do. They're looking to make a profit. They're looking
it's disgusting.
to. Well, no, I think in some cases it's disgusting the way people do it.
Listen, honest work deserves honest pay. If you come up with a great idea, you invent a bitter mousetrap, they're supposed to beat a path to the door.
Right, but I think the way these people in Disneyland in Washington D.C. Believe the profit world is it's like there's nothing wrong. Hunter Biden comes back from his latest paternity test, and he said, "Hey, Dad, I just got this great. Somebody just gave me $1.5 billion." Like, great, Biden, great, Hunter. That's fantastic. It's wonderful. How much are you going to give to your paternity suit, your mistress, and this and that? How'd you make the money? Well, the government of China just gave me $1.5 billion while you were vice president, Dad.
Nice.
I'm a lawyer. I went to Yale Law School. I don't think I have to report that on the Foreign Agents Registration Act. And Biden Sr. says, of course not. That's how we roll. We're Bidens, So when you think about corporate fraud, however, here's a case where Terry McAuliffe was sued by a bunch of Chinese investors who, there's something called Green Tech Automotive, slap a name that sounds pretty good, Green
right.
Tech, and then AOC says, yeah, Green Tech's fantastic, it's more Green Tech. And of course, it was a case where the plan didn't come together. They had projections, the thing went bankrupt, it didn't work. And here's a case where these Chinese investors tried to get their money back, and the judge says, actually, you haven't met the high bar that you suffered a loss, and that McAuliffe and the other defendants knew they were defrauding you. They knew what they were doing was wrong. That they knowingly went to you and said, "All right, we're going to go to Jason, and we're going to take, or the Chinese, we're going to take $17 million for a project to, let's say, fight HIV/AIDS in Africa when we can't do that lawfully," right? They didn't do that. They just went, they could do anything with their company. They said, we're going to do this green tech idea. Here's a document that says how we're going to do it. Here, the document has in it risk factors typically, saying, I'm an idiot. I've never really made money in the legitimate world. You could lose your entire investment.
Boilerplate stuff.
And the Chinese will say, oh, okay, yeah. Well, we'll put this money in. 17 million is not a bad amount of money for somebody who's so tied to Hillary Clinton. Let's go back to the chronology of this investment. Did this investment start prior to perhaps November 9th, 2016? Might the Chinese have been looking at this and saying, McAuliffe is the schmuck. He could have asked us for $1.7 billion for this project. We would have given it to him, because we know that once Hillary wins for $1.7 billion, we don't have to, worry about the United States caring about what we're doing in the South China Sea. So this case I put up here in this summary to acknowledge that in the corporate for-profit world, it is very difficult to actually successfully prosecute and win a conviction on a fraud case. It's just the way our laws and precedents are set up. Not so in a charity fraud. In a charity fraud, you are not living in a case where you're supposed to be making any money. You're not allowed to make money through the operation of a charity. So there's no suspicious profit motive. There's no such thing as a venture entrepreneur, a charity entrepreneur, or a venture philanthropist. So that's just rubbish. That's invested. That's advertising agencies.
Drunk semantics.
Yeah, drunk advertising agents are sitting around. Yeah, we'll call it venture philanthropy. It's rubbish. It's just there's no such thing.
Call that a mashup.
Yeah, and so. Here you have a case where McAuliffe skated for now. Maybe you notice he's wisely gotten, he thought to himself, I got to promote a deal, right? I have a long history with the Clintons. I'm going to promote a deal with Hillary Clinton's crazy ass, she's got a number of the brothers, one just died, with the crazy brothers who have, are so scandal plagued. It's a tough, call. Is Roger Clinton more star-crossed than Tony Rodham and the other one, Hugh Rodham, I think it is. But anyway,
that was
so
the father, wasn't it, Hugh?
I forget who it is, but they did not. This case took a fair amount of time, and the courts protected. The courts protected the McAuliffe and Tony Rodham, right? So let's look at the next page, though. We're talking about a $17 million investment went wrong, no issue. Courts let him off. This is from the FBI's site, okay? And it talks about, this is a general cautionary warning. And I've excerpted certain comments in here. There's a fraudster in Georgia. Now, that, in my opinion, is John Hope Bryant. He started out in California, but he switched his charity to Georgia, in theory. However, when you check the Georgia filings, you discover that he didn't, in fact, register in Georgia. He didn't do it lawfully. But here's a summary of this person, whose name is Kai Brockington, and the FBI says he created a real charity on paper, but it never did anything other than line his own pockets. And where have I heard that?
Of a few of those.
Have I heard that before?
Yeah.
Is there any family we know about that has, say, 2 mansions in Chappaqua, one in Washington, D.C., a daughter with a fancy $20 million apartment in Chelsea? Do we know anybody like that?
Well, they're not lining their pockets, Charles. They've spent it all on real estate.
No, they said in addition they're lining up. Have you seen Hillary Clinton's pantsuits and her dresses?
You're right. It's expensive clothing she's always wearing.
Well, there's plenty of room for stuff in your pockets. I mean, So you look at this, and this is a case. He got $668,000 over 4 years, which he spent on himself and his family, okay? And the FBI decides, we'll take this case on, right? So we'll go to the next page. What kind of a penalty did this guy suffer, if it is a guy? Kai, I guess it is, it says he took it.
Kai is a man's name.
Yeah, he pleaded guilty in May to tax fraud and mail fraud, 41 months in federal prison, May of this year. Okay.
It's kind of a long time.
For 41 months for 600.
3.5 years. It seems like
right, but for 668,000. Okay, that's some of Bill's more expensive speeches are that. And so, in this case, it seems like, initially when I would hear out of the crazy lunatic Maxine Waters, I'd hear these stories about differential treatment of minorities and whites, and the justice system isn't fair, and they throw blacks away forever for crack cocaine and recreational cocaine they let you off on if you're white and all that. I thought she was making a lot of that stuff up, but I think it's true.
Yeah.
And I think when we look at this charity fraud record here, if you're going to put somebody in prison, it's no picnic to go to, I'm told, to go to federal prison for 41 months. You're not in there with people who say, oh, nice to meet you. I understand you went to Yale. I'd like to talk to you about Skull and Bones. It's more like, how much are you going to pay me so I don't cut your fucking face off?
Well, this guy's probably going to some,
Even that, I'm told. There's somebody, I forget who I met.
Tennis club jail.
No. I met somebody who went to such a jail, who actually started out at J.P. Morgan decades ago.
Didn't like it?
No, because you're in there with mafia dons and other people, and they screw with you. And he said that every night these people would come to him and they'd say, you're not going to know when, but just when you're not suspecting, just when you're trying to go to sleep, just when you're not suspecting, we're gonna slit your throat.
Why do they tell him that?
Just to fuck with them.
Come on.
It's not a. And also,
do they want something from him, or what?
I don't know. Read
but
Rajat.
They didn't do that.
Read Rajat Gupta's book about his prison experience. I mean, he talks about how his big problem was he didn't understand the hierarchy. He says, here's a guy who's managing partner of McKinsey, a gigantic global thing that advises people on hierarchies. He didn't understand the hierarchy in a prison, and he didn't understand it when
you run your giant company.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how this prison works, but let me tell you.
Sean Atwood in there.
Yeah,
he
exactly.
knows what's going on.
So he failed to appreciate that when they say your room better be ready at 6 p.m., you got to stand in line and be ready, and he didn't do that.
The cops, you mean, said
no, inside the prison. Once you're in prison,
the guards told him.
Yeah, and he thought he could, 6, I could do 602 is fine,
I want to call, I'll get back.
Yeah, exactly. And one of my Blackberries is talking to the other one, and I've got to, can I take a, rain check on this?
So they throw him in the shoe?
They put him in the solitary confinement for 2 weeks.
Ooh.
And apparently it's rugged, So, so I think, and for a reason. I mean, I think people, if we see how people go to excess, particularly looking at the Clinton case. We see what you do. If when a grifter decides that the rules do not apply to the grifter, they go crazy. They create the Clinton Foundation. They create the Operation Hope thing. They create, all these different things. So when we look at this, and people have seen a lot of our shows before, we look at this, for those who haven't, we don't need to pull the links up, Jason, in the interest of time. We got to ask ourselves, the very moment in time when dopey James Comey, with the whistleblower telling him, the State Department person saying, I've got tangible evidence of Hillary Clinton. I was in the room when she committed crimes, mishandling classified information. This is January 10th, 2016. State Department person says that. James Comey says, well, I better get my crack team of Lisa Strzok and the other Peter Page, or Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, whatever
their names are.
Yeah, let's get them and their mistresses and McCabe and everyone else focused on this and ignore your concrete evidence so we can give the Clintons a pass, because if we don't give them a pass, then it'll implicate Obama, and then Hillary won't win, and then we'll get in trouble. And with all of that, why don't we do this? Well, just to satisfy the masses, let's go after a 71-year-old black female representative who's Democrat in the same week we give Hillary Clinton a pass, Corinne Brown.
Right.
Yeah, let's go after that. Let's go after that person, so nobody can say we're light on crime. Well, I would say you're light on crime. I would say you're persecuting this Corinne Brown, and you're letting Hillary Clinton, who loves hot sauce, off the hook. I mean, you can't explain that to me.
What's the latest on Corinne Brown?
She's still in prison. She's however old she is now. She's 73, I guess. And then we have another link for those people who don't understand this yet. The crack team of Comey, Mueller, and Rosenstein spent 4 years looking with the FBI resources, looking at the Clinton Foundation, and could not see an obvious fraud. So that made them perfectly well qualified to not see the obvious exculpatory information concerning the so-called witch hunt against Trump. Because you missed the Clinton Foundation fraud, this team will put you on trying to bag Donald Trump starting in 2015, 16, 17, whenever they all got together on it.
We've heard basically nothing about Rosenstein for the past...
I think he's been singing as a guest.
You think so?
I think so. Not with an H in that, just singing. But
not in India.
Yeah, but we also have, and let's put this link I would like to put up, Jason, if you could, the Amazon link here. This book, Bottle of Lies, I've gotten more into it. This is by a real investigative journalist. This is the person who did the book, the article for Fortune, Dirty Medicine. This book came out May 14th this year, and it's really, I mean, it's eye-opening. It really is, and.
Wow. I wonder what this says about Barry and Honey Sherman.
I don't think it goes into that.
Oh.
I think it's focused pretty much on America, I believe, but I'll have to check. Excuse me. But this, this is a really important thing. Our population, of all the things you might focus on, you've got, Elizabeth Warren wanting to come up with a plan to guarantee internet access to every portion. You could drive through the Death Valley, and if you want to live.
People are really worried about that.
Yeah, I want to live, in the floodplain near New Orleans. And I want to make sure that even in a massive combination earthquake and tsunami or whatever might hit me, I got to make sure that the idiot.
Instagram selfies.
Yeah, that I'm doing it, exactly. As opposed to saying,
Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, as opposed to sitting back and say, all right, look, in 1980, the population in America was very different. There were not that many older people who might be taking a lot of medicine. And now the population is skewed heavily to people who, rightly or wrongly, take a disproportionately high amount of medicine. Shouldn't we be making sure that the medicine that comes into this country actually is efficacious, works for you? And beyond that, if it does, if you really need to take it, should we be thinking through issues of resistance? Should we be thinking through issues of cost and issues of quality and issues of all this kind of stuff? There's an area where I'd be a lot more interested in seeing governments get involved, legitimately get involved. And then shouldn't we be asking, why in the hell are we making this stuff in India and China? I mean, it's
why are they letting them advertise it every night on Sean Hannity to make everyone think like, I should get that pill? Like going to the doctor to ask for a pill is the craziest thing ever. And I think that started in the 2000s. Like, you didn't always have those pharmaceutical ads.
Well, that's because, as I'm saying, the population's aged. It's really interesting. No, it is.
Is that why, or is it they just wanted to sell more drugs?
It's both. But if you look back, it's really, as a numbers nerd, which I will definitely claim that I am, sometimes numbers just jump out the page at me anyway, and you look at the mixture of the population. You look at across the world, 41% of the population is under 21. Okay, that's not the case in the United States. It might be 20%, right? And order of magnitude. And it used to be that to get to 100, that was unusual. I mean, now
you think a lot of people were dying of general anxiety and restless leg syndrome, or is that some crap they invented to sell you a pill?
Or Dupuytren's contraction, or whatever that thing is.
All this?
My fingers are going that way. They should be going that way.
Take a pill.
So I'm sure Dupuytren's contraction is a real thing, and let's hope my pillow is a real thing too. But anyway, why did so many people? Obama, Holder, Clinton, Rosenstein, Lynch, all give Ranbaxy, and China, which is the company, a subsidiary of Ranbaxy that actually makes the engine of these pills. It's called the active pharmaceutical ingredient. Why did they give this thing a pass? Why do they refuse to get into it? And why did Dopey James? I mean, it's one thing. I'm sure he got a lot of mail when he was head of the FBI, but you get a package, a 12-page letter that comes in, and it had some grammatical errors in it and stuff. This is a link to the show that we did, the last show that we did, that goes in great depth at about the 1 hour mark for an hour or so into this whole issue. Why you get this thing as you're the head of the FBI, and you probably give it to somebody first to vet, and they say, hey boss, this thing is pretty, it's pretty explosive here. I mean, it says this guy with a great resume is claiming that he was in the room, can explain how the Clintons, Hillary in particular, were using the Clinton Foundation illegally with all these classified information that they obviously did have. And Comey says, no.
Can't you see I've got Legos here? Come back later.
Yeah, my Star Wars toys are fantastic. Actually, could you get that big Cat D8 ready? First we've got to bleach bit this letter, then we're going to bury it, put some acid on it. I mean, it's amazing to me that the mainstream press is even today saying, well, the whole thing that Brennan's saying, we started to be concerned about Trump in May of 2016 or March of 2016. Here you have, a whistleblower saying, hey, you opened this investigation in July 10th, 2015. He knew about it. And he has evidence. And the FBI says, no, we're in the business. We don't meddle in elections. We just make sure that Hillary Clinton's going to win so we don't get exposed. Well, that's not meddling. That's self-preservation. So we go to the next page. All right. Going back to John Hope Bryant. And there is an interesting connection here, the fascinating connection we're going to take you through. The previous show, we don't need to pull it up. The link is there, again, at the 1 hour mark. This one, you want to watch the whole thing. This is the show where we take you through the nuts and bolts of all the different ways in which this Operation Hope broke every conceivable registration, reporting, thinking about how to be a charity. The first, just a simple way to think about this thing, you got a charity and its name is very straightforward. It's called Los Angeles Operation Hope. And you think, so where is that thing going to operate? And you look in the Articles of Incorporation, it says in Los Angeles City and County, California, in America.
Yeah.
That's what it says. Now, if they wanted to say back when they formed it that they were going to operate all over the world, it would have been a simple matter back then to say, we're starting in Los Angeles, and then we're going to go around the world doing this stuff. But they never did that, and they never amended. They never had these lawyers they had involved with them. We're going to meet a very famous one in a second. He never said, hey, I notice we're having this meeting in Newark. And the question I have for you, the name of your entity is Los Angeles Operation Hub. I've checked the Articles of Incorporation that says you're only supposed to do work in Los Angeles. Why are we having this meeting in Newark? And John Hope Bryan says, don't ask any more questions, okay?
Is that true?
I'm just making that up. The whole thing I just made up. Okay. But it's kind of like,
hypothetical.
Like Adam Schiff.
That was a parody.
That was a parody.
And we're not in Congress.
I'm not.
You can do parody.
Yeah,
here.
I can try.
Yeah.
So, there's a long history here. If you actually look at the facts, and this is what investigators do. They say, all right.
Not if they work for the FBI, they don't.
Well, they might do it if they work in individual states who start to get concerned about it. So we think about, this entity is based in California. It also operates in other high-tax states. These states don't seem to have, they're not in the business of producing budget surpluses. They have large amounts of debt. They need to get that debt paid off. And so you look at this idea that this thing is now operating in South Africa and all over the world, that its principal has no demonstrated record of making money, but suddenly has mansions, is racing Ferraris, is going on fancy vacations nonstop, going through multiple divorces, paying for that. And nobody says, no, wait a minute, where's the accounting firm and all that? And you start looking at the accounts, and they're all wrong. Nothing is right. It's just school of Clinton. Nothing that is supposed to be done properly is done properly. So that's what we told you about before. We also mentioned that the idea of setting an organization up to enrich people is at essence not a charity. I mean, if what you're doing is, it may be a nice thing to try to, quote, lessen inequality by taking, look at that. I mean, that's not any old Ferrari. I mean, that's an expensive machine.
Well, I think all of them are pretty expensive, but that's definitely a new one. I think that's like I don't even know. That's an expensive one.
Yeah. And so the idea that what he's doing here is promoting, he says, silver rights, not civil rights, silver rights. What the hell? I mean,
where does he say that?
In multiple promotions.
Silver rights.
In other words, the old adage, that what you need to provide is 40 acres and a mule. You need to give wealth redistribution. You need to give people a way to make more money. And I agree with all of that. And I definitely think that there is major problems in our educational field where we're teaching, we're encouraging people to go into debt. Mammoth amounts of debt to go to these prestige schools, and no one is doing what they, instead of saying, as they do here in New York, or they try to do here in New York, you can't buy a certain type of soda because it has too many calories.
Too big.
You should say, with regard to some of these places, you can't, if you want to study, I don't know, reptilian dating practices and be a botanist for the rest of your life. You probably shouldn't. I mean, it's a great thing to do, but you should take out $400,000 worth of student loans because it's going to be real hard. Because the way our laws are written, those loans cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. You probably shouldn't do that.
What do you mean? Student loans can't be discharged from bank? Why not? That's bad.
So that you could the banks.
Because otherwise, everybody would go bankrupt and never pay them.
Well, what the banks say is, we really agree with this goal of making sure that people go to these universities, and you have to understand that unless we're protected here, we wouldn't extend the loan in the first place, and the real interest rate would be 40% or a payday loan. So if you want us to do this, to take this risk, you have to give us this opportunity. And the fact that we are the industry that pays off politicians more than any other industry, the fact that you're sitting here in Washington, D.C., your AOC, rent's too damn high, now you got to have a place in your home district and a place in Washington, D.C., and the lenders say, well, we might just be able, we have a special loan program for members of Congress and senators. Would you like a mansion over here? We can give you a loan at 125% loan to value or some ridiculous relationship, and that you should never get in the first place. I mean, it's just so corrupt. And this idea that if you were going to go, I would understand, there's a fellow, I think it's Bob Johnson, who built a gigantic media operation legitimately. Right? I would understand it if Bob Johnson, back in 1992 after the Rodney King thing, looked at this and said, I really care about the fact that in the minority community, let's say, or in the economically disadvantaged community, literacy in finance is something that's just not even discussed. I mean, we're concerned about, did I make it home without getting shot?
Right.
You know, is there enough food here?
Well, and regular literacy before you even get to financial literacy.
So I think it's an excellent thing to promote financial literacy. In fact, the place I would start is Congress. I would say that, you know, that you can't be in Congress unless you're financially literate.
Actually, you can, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know.
And you can ask all kinds of questions and whatever.
Right. So we start, for people who are interested in this, go back and look at the 15 September 2019 presentation. Here's something lifted from the MOU and a link to the MOU that was actually signed by Valerie Jarrett on November 16th, 2008. It refers to something, the Clinton Economic Opportunity Initiative. Now, you know, that of all the initiatives they've come up with, why don't you just call it the Clinton Pay Me a Bribe Initiative? How the hell is it Economic Opportunity Initiative?
Charity. Right.
It is not. It's like, you know, they should try this. Now I'm walking up and down 6th Avenue and 7th Avenue, and in the morning on 6th Avenue. It's now every block. There's somebody standing in front of the floor, in front of a door of a shop or whatever, and they're asking, you know, one of the more creative ones I remember on 8th Street years ago, a guy comes up to me and says, "Can you spare $480,000 for a condominium?"
You're like, you're never going to find anything in this neighborhood that low.
It was pretty clever. I thought that was funny.
Got to go to Staten Island or something.
You know, that's basically what this is. I mean, to call it, there's no charter, there's no scope for the Bill Clinton Foundation to do anything in New York, anything outside Little Rock, let alone engaging in an economic opportunity initiative, which, you know, at the time, back in 2002, they hadn't really paid off all their debts yet, and you know they were.
I think that was Bill Clinton's strip club fund is the Economic Opportunity Initiative. Right. It's all in $1 bills.
The Bill Clinton Easiest Opportunity Initiative, whatever. So then, you know, people think on these internets that you're not going to be able to go back and find the press releases that were pushed out in the time frame. Well, here's a press release pushed out by the Clinton Foundation from New York, April 25th, 2002. And we're going to show you in a second, you skeptics out there, particularly you managing partners of law firms that may want to go back and check the work of certain partners we're going to be talking about. We're going to show you how you can go back and use search engines, search portals, to check and see whether there was a William J. Clinton Foundation legitimately registered in New York on April 25th, 2002. I'm going to spoil it for you.
How do we do it?
Ixnay.
Oh, there
Ixnay.
wasn't.
No way. And Bill Clinton wasn't authorized to form a partnership. And here we have it, and it mentions Operation Hope, and they have a banking on the future classroom. And one of these things these people do here, the Clintons and John Hope Bryant, they are master slogan writers.
Yeah.
They could come up, the Clinton, you know, what do they call it? The Clinton Climate Initiative, the Clinton Global Initiative. They never have the Clinton, you know, we screwed up initiative, or the Clinton Charity Fraud, don't do charity fraud initiative. I mean, they come up with all these grandiose names, and people give money away. They'll say, look, if I come up with this great name, you know, the George W. Bush put him in a dunking shed initiative, you could probably raise $10 million for that, maybe more. But here it says that they created this banking on the future classroom, which Bill Clinton visits. Again, he's not an authorized part of the Clinton Foundation then. And they've gotten together with a VH1 Foundation.
VH1, the music channel?
Yeah. And I'll have to look that up and see if it exists. And here we have this guy saying, John Hope Bryant, Operation Hope is happy to partner with the Clinton Presidential Foundation. Okay, yeah. Did you do any checking, lawyers, to see if there was a Clinton Presidential Foundation?
Is that a new name?
Yet another name, another variant. So you have... People don't understand yet that there is only one legal name of a foundation.
The William J. Clinton Foundation.
Presidential Foundation.
Sorry. Right.
April 25th, 2002. That was its only name. It was, and it was referred to it by the city of Little Rock as the William Jefferson Clinton Presidential Foundation, or alternatively without the word "the," or alternatively with the words comma Inc. at the end of the name. And none of those are real names, and it matters because you're not, the way the IRS believes that they're going to protect against charity fraud is banks are not supposed to accept money for a charity who doesn't have actually that legal name. You're supposed to prove to the banker, that you actually have the right to use that legal name, in this case in New York, and they didn't. And certainly Bill Clinton didn't. But what was going on back in 2002? We have a Democratic Party that needs campaign funding for the by-election in 2002. We have Hillary getting ready for re-election. We have a presidential election coming up. He's here in New York. He's a prolific fundraiser, as is Terry McAuliffe, as are all these people. And they do this partnership with this guy, John here, he calls himself just John Bryant.
Huh.
So let's go to the next page.
It's interesting, Charles. Something so simple as just changing the name seems to be one of the most commonly utilized practices of fraudsters.
Yeah. So here's some common themes. And we said in the previous approach, who was zooming who? I mean, who was out fraudstering who? Operation Hope was organized in '92. Bill wasn't even president then. He was running for president. He was trying to get through the whole Jennifer Flowers.
Of the Rodney King thing.
Yeah, he was trying to get through the whole Jennifer Flowers, allegations. She was going to come out in Playboy and all that kind of stuff. I know. I'm just saying in this time frame. And here's John Hope Bryant at the age of 26, setting up a charity that's supposed to focus on Los Angeles, and instantly saying, I don't want to do that. I mean, let's go all over the world. And Clinton says, I don't know whether they copied this or whether Clinton says, well, I'll organize a presidential foundation, or as people say, we'll do that in Little Rock. But the second I get out of Washington, D.C., I'm not going back to Little Rock. I want to go all over the world. I want me a private jet. I want, all kinds of high living. So
can
commonality.
The president put his library wherever he wants, or why did they put it in Little Rock?
Well, again, grifters have to grift. So in the same way that, cities compete inside a country or compete for the Olympics, if you think about a presidential library in your Little Rock,
tourists and stuff.
Yeah, it'll attract tourists, and with tourists you have hotel rooms, and with hotel rooms you may have office buildings, and then you have an argument that based the thing in Little Rock.
But is Trump going to put his library in New York City, or?
I have no idea. I mean, Donald Trump, if he followed the Clinton Foundation practice, you would have to go to some African country and say, listen, why don't you give us 1 million acres and
Donald Trump's library in Malawi.
or a big country, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, will give you 1 million acres, because that's about how much room you'd need to store all of Donald Trump's personal and president. So Clinton, and Barack Obama and Bush have written it into their charters, in theory, until this gets changed and properly policed, that the Presidential Foundation is going to have an apartment should he visit that place. And in this case, the Clinton Foundation, they did it based on the precedent set by the Bush Foundation.
Huh.
That's the 5,000 square foot apartment for Bill, penthouse apartment with a
golf course,
with a swimming pool and whatever on top of the building. That is just absurd. You can't do that. And in theory, what this should be, and the reason it gets a tax break, is the presidential library is just that it's storing records that were created during Bill's term, created or received, and the National Archives then doesn't have to do that. So that's why you get a tax break for it, in theory. Okay? So both of these charities now have operations all over the U.S. and all over the world, Operation Hope and the Clinton Foundation, none of which is authorized. But then you think, if you're sitting there and you say, okay, I'm Operation Hope, they're rich people in Los Angeles, I could try to get money out of them. But when it comes time to raising real money, you have to come to New York City, the finance capital of the world. And New York City, in theory, has laws that say, and they're strict, because there have been charity frauds in New York going back decades.
Oh, I know.
Exactly. and so before you come to New York to solicit more than $25,000, you're supposed to register, truthfully. And if aspects of your charity, change, let's say that you become associated with somebody who has to surrender their two law licenses and is milking the charity for expenses under a theory that you're not collecting a salary, you're just going to live like a king in private jets and presidential suites and send the bills to the Clinton Foundation, you have to disclose all that. And in this case, it would seem to me that Bill Clinton aped John Hope Bryant. He saw what John Hope Bryant was doing. He said, if he could do it, he was not the President of the United States, I'll do it.
Huh.
But
Wow.
We give you the ability with these search engines, the portals that are below, to check for yourselves, when it was that Operation Hope started in New York, and when did the Clinton Foundation start in New York? You can look, here it was a good time to talk about it. You have, for New York State, you have the Secretary of State, which we've been through before, and we don't need to pull a link up. If you want to just see when the name started being used in New York State, use Al Gore's internet, put the name into that entity search, and you'll see for yourself. And what you'll find is that both in the case of Operation Hope and various Clinton charities, they were using, you look at the press releases, they got offices in New York, they're doing all kinds of stuff, but they had not registered, either one of them, properly. They still haven't registered properly. They haven't corrected their filings. And you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to, when you register in New York, they ask very tough questions, including, when did you first conduct operations in New York? They want to know the date. What names are you using? Has the organization or any people associated with the organization been involved with administrative proceedings? A broad, general question mark about, were you ever
your law license revoked?
Yeah, your law license revoked, or
any rape accusations flying around,
yeah, moral turpitude,
kind of
that kind of stuff. Have you ever, in Utah, moral turpitude? They ask that question, and you have to answer about did you use a fundraising firm that has been disciplined for soliciting money in a state where it wasn't registered? Did that happen? In the Clinton Foundation, of course it happened. Did you put any of your commingle, in the case of the Clintons, did you commingle people and staff with partisan political activities, either for a candidate or against a candidate? Of course they did that too. So Bill has never disclosed any of these defects in his record, any conflicts. The fact he's involved with a lot of other crooked charities, nor has John Hope Bryant done any of that. That he's making money off side deals with donors. He hasn't disclosed any of that in his charity filings anywhere. And we've been through this ad nauseum. How many different names? We're going to have to maybe do a special session, one like the name game instead of the dating game, where we encourage members of the audience to come in and send us emails or whatever, or comments on and with examples of the many names you can find around the world that have been used by these various charities that aren't the real name of the charity.
Oh, well, we've forgot, I don't know if we've ever spoken about this publicly, but we have not yet achieved the dream of a Sunday with Charles Jeopardy episode. Perhaps.
I think the people who are targets of the investigations that I hope are ongoing are living that game, and it's not a pleasant game. It's like, this is a game with an unhappy ending for them.
Yes.
So I would encourage skeptics who are saying, well, Charles, you don't know what you're talking about. Just use your own eyes. You don't have to listen to me. You can believe
anybody else's.
You can believe your own lion eyes, and look through these various sites. You have to register, as I say, with the Secretary of State in most states, just to operate. And then the charity division of states that have high income taxes, there's a separate division and scheme. And in some states, that's not. You have to register for other reasons beyond just this. If you're an educational charity, you have to, there are other Department of Education, as the Trump Foundation found out when they didn't register. You get shut down. So how did the Clinton Foundation operate, how does it still operate the Clinton Global Initiative University, which doesn't exist? You're not supposed to use the name university unless you are a university in New York.
No, it's a
minor detail.
Technicality then.
So if we go to the next slide. Now this is sad, actually. Okay, this is actually sad. October 8th, 2019, they announced at Operation Hope that they were going to restate certain years. Now, they're going to have to restate going back to the very beginning, but they started with this idea they're going to restate 2017, and they missed, I believe, the deadline, or they may miss the deadline for submitting the 2018 audit. And this is a press release. You know how back at school, when, let's say, the paper was due on whatever date and you kind of forgot about it.
Yeah, I don't have it.
As in the case of my eldest child, my ex-wife decided it would be fun to let that person go to
Disneyland or something instead of
far worse. To go
Legoland with James Comey?
No, far worse. Not as bad as that, but to what's that show, the electronic show in Las Vegas in January?
Oh, CES, right.
Right.
You told me this story.
Right, and sort of didn't bother to tell anybody, the nannies, me, the school. And
That's
the school
bizarre.
calls me up, and I'm in Ireland on a business trip and says, Mr. Ortel, we're just a question for you. Happen to know where your child is? What are you talking about? You're the one who's supposed to be running the school.
That's a little bit crazy for them to call you and say that. You must have panicked.
Well, I knew her for a while by that
There's
point.
a lot of children
And it
in
was
the
like,
world.
oh,
This is just
no,
one.
I mean, the notion that you would say, and that's a great idea, the beginning of a term, right, in January, just like say, fuck, the beginning of the term, I'll go to Las Vegas.
New
with a 12-year-old.
DVD player is
With a
coming out.
12-year-old. Let's spend 3 or 4 days out there, and Anyway, similarly, this is a press release announcing the virtue signal, that we have decided at last to only practice best practices, And so we've hired this eminent firm of Fulton and Kozak. Now, what I see on Fulton and Kozak's website is, not much. It's a very small firm. And Operation Hope, I mean, you could do a lot as a small firm, but Operation Hope is spread all over the world. Having moved to Atlanta in 2017, they select the highly respected Fulton and Kozak. On the list of accounting firms, you're not going to find Fulton and Kozak. You might find, Schlemiel and Schlemiel ahead of Fulton and Kozak. I mean, it's
Well,
not.
they're highly respected by BKD.
They're all ex-BKD people. We're making that up.
Oh, Fozak. Excellent choice.
Kozak, yeah. Fulton, when I need to get out of a jam, I hire F and K. F and K, or F dot K. F dot KU. But the point is that while John Hope Bryant may have moved to Atlanta personally in 2017, Operation Hope, Inc. period, did not actually register during 2017 or 18 as a charity in Atlanta, but nonetheless operated there. And here they try to characterize the problems. There are technical errors of accounting allocation, small corrections, further if all the stuff in red. And then it talks about, these just minor problems, but, we do more good than harm. I mean, we've done, after all, in 27 years, I mean, I love these claims. In 27 years, Operation Hope, which doesn't lawfully exist most places, has served, now what does that mean, to serve somebody? Has served more than 4 million individuals. 4 million.
Burgers.
I don't know, but 4 million, to serve 4 million people as a small little operation, that's not an easy thing to do. I mean, how long did each serving take to administer? Let's say it took, an hour. 4 million hours, do the math. I mean, how many people are in this operation? It's just rubbish. And they've directed over $3.2 billion in economic activity into disenfranchised communities. Now,
Really?
Impacting exactly 1,467 U.S. cities and towns. Not 1,468, not 1,466, but exactly 1,467 U.S. cities and towns. And I call mega bullshit on this. This is not charity. I mean, how does this organization direct economic activity? What does that mean?
I don't know.
Are you created $3.2 billion in economic, you mean, in other words, is that profit? Is it revenue? Is it I mean, what is this? And show me the law firm that has gone over this thing and checked. Is there one person, yes there is, and you'll see in a second, is there one person who stuck his neck on the chopping block and said, you know what, I am the grown-up in the room, I'm going to go on the board of this thing, I am going to advise this thing pro bono, meaning not charging them, and I'm going to make sure I'm going to put my professional reputation at stake at a big law firm. Is there somebody dumb enough to do that? And the answer is yes. You're going to see in a second. But before we get there, one of our allies suggested, you know what, you ought to show people this tool. And if we hit this tool, this is called, this is actually a good tool.
Harvester.
Yeah, what it does is, I don't know if it's going to come up.
It opened all the way over here, sorry.
All right, it's okay.
There we go.
It's a tough tool to find.
Just
We want to hit the
decides.
middle tab here, search for single audit. So what this is long ago, the federal government said, we want to keep track of organizations that take government grants. You'll remember the Clinton Foundation claims in various press releases it takes all kinds of government grants. But when you ask for details on that, there are no details. And they should be details in here. So if we want to search for single audits, we hit that thing. Let's see if there are any single audits for Operation Hope. So we, I don't know where you
Search.
say, try, you have to acknowledge that you've read it down here. Continue to search results.
Oh, maybe I hit search too soon. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a modify search you can put. You see that? Yeah. So just put what, I don't know. Try general. Yeah. Okay. So what we need is we need to put, go down the page a little bit if you can. Auditee name. Just you would put Operation Hope in there. Operation Hope, comma Inc. All right. And then you hit search. So there are 6 records, it says. Okay.
Download it?
Download summary report, yeah. There's 6 records. Now, there's a lot of information in there for the people who doubt that there's a problem. But what you could do, and you could do this for the Clinton Foundation, you'll find that the Clinton Foundation has disguised, they put in the wrong EIN, or whoever did this, the wrong number. So you will not find it if you punch in the real 311580204. You've got to punch in 11. If you go down the page, you see there's findings. You see this down here?
Wait a minute.
These,
oh, yeah.
You hit that.
I'm not much of an Excel user. There we go.
Right. And so what you will find, you see here it says, for 2014, a material weakness, no, no, no. Significant deficiency, yes. No, wow. Yes. And when you go into, we're running short on time, but when you go and do this yourself, you know, if you're interested in this, and you will see that this is a disaster. The material, the weaknesses, the findings are extremely alarming. And this is just, you know, the auditors going in, the standards for a single audit are tighter. In other words, the accounting profession got together and said, you know what, when we're talking about generally auditing a charity, we'll have tight requirements. But on the notion of what did a charity do with government grants, we want to really tighten it up. And we want to ask the accounting firm to take special efforts to make sure that they check everything. And when, whichever accounting firm it was that went into this in each year, and there are other examples, people who are expert and better with computers will find, suffice it to say, this is the definition of a shit show. I mean, this is so far away from being what it should be. And as we've talked to you about in the past, the accountants, they're smart. They've been through the profession, notwithstanding that Eric Hansen is the senior officer of the AICPA. Other than that guy, they're pretty smart about thinking through warning signs for fraud. And so when you start seeing multiple suspect use of names, missing deadlines for filing, restating, now you see these A133 findings that there are no controls. At a certain point, you say, you know what, this is a fraud. I mean, this is not a charity. It's like Kai Brockingham. This is somebody who came up with something that sounded fancy and has been getting a bunch of money, be it government grants and other ways. Let's check into his side businesses, which we will do in another broadcast. We're already an hour and 45 minutes into this one. But just on the core charity, you know, I'm a very simple-minded person. If you come to me and you say, look, I want to work with you on this project, whatever that might be, crowdsource the truth, and we get into it, and now we've done, thanks to you, and thank you for all this, we've done a lot of work together, and then I wake up the next, you know, today's show, for example, you know, 15 minutes before the show, if you say, you know, Charles, look, you know, we don't have the poster, we don't have electricity in the apartment, we don't have, but we've got the viewers who are ready. And what I'd like to discuss with you is a real estate development project on Mars. You know, that's going to be a very short discussion.
That's a growth industry.
Or we're going to create a weed farm on Mars. I mean,
a lot of carbon dioxide. That's a great idea.
I know.
Charles.
We'll get AOC right on it. You know,
wait a minute. Now you're on to some. Forget this crowdsource the truth. Hydroponic Mars.
Yeah. So for those people who have, and thanks to some unnamed individuals for reminding me and sending me links on this, this is a very important thing to do. When we think about the fact that the Clinton Foundation claims that it's taken all this money for government grants, but not only are there no mainstream audits for the Clinton Foundation, there are no A133 audits until 2010, and they took a lot of government money, 7, 8, and 9, and we don't know exactly how much money they took prior to 7. So it should come as a gigantic set, not red flags. It's like, the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles. I mean, you're looking at this, it's fitting, I suppose, that the Operation Hope started just as Los Angeles was burning down. It's like, Rodney King, that predicament, we're going to burn Los Angeles down. Why don't we burn the world down with Operation Hope? We're going to make a mockery of Foundation standards. So if we go to the next page. Okay, this is the gentleman I was talking. He goes by the name Steve Ryan, and he is probably a wonderful human being. I've never met him. But on the Operation Hope website, they say he was the founding chairman of Operation Hope's Mid-Atlantic Board, and has served Operation Hope in a variety of capacities since March 2000, on the global board since 2011. You think, right, he's a lawyer, and I know he's busy, and you'll see in a second why he's so busy. You would think that if somebody came into his office and said, look, I run something called Los Angeles Operation Hope, and I'd like you to be the founding chairman of my Mid-Atlantic board, that somebody might say, I'm a partner of a law firm, and I may be a little slow, but tell me how a Los Angeles Operations Hope does anything in the Mid-Atlantic region and why I should want to be chairman. And as a guest, John Hope Bryant said, I'm here with my good buddy, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, and okay, yeah, so I'm all in,
Right.
And then you look at this. He says he worked with Ambassador Andrew Young.
Who's that?
Andrew Young used to be the mayor of Atlanta, and after that he became the ambassador of the UN. And he's, a very sympathetic guy. He's been involved with a lot of good things. But here, when I see this, this guy Ryan is a board member of the Shakespeare Theater in Washington D.C. and heads its annual Will on the Hill fundraiser.
Oh, that sounds like the lamest.
I know.
Like you're going to go outside and there's some bad Shakespeare presentation and everybody thinks they're very scholarly.
Right. So I actually, my ex-wife did some good things in her life. And one of them was she was chairman of the Tri-State Center for the Performing Arts up in the intersection of New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and it was a good exercise. It was a summer theater that would, travel around and bus people in from the retirement homes to watch this stuff. And it was actually, it was a little bit crazy, but it was fun. The things that could go wrong with that, like teenagers unsupervised with theater people who don't mind drinking and other things. And, it's a prescription for danger. But when you look at this, you say, all right, Steve Ryan went to college, went to law school, partnered a big law firm. He can't say he knows nothing about fundraising. He can't say he knows nothing about...
He could say whatever he wants.
Well, incredibly say. He shouldn't say he knows nothing about the fact that Washington, D.C. has some of the highest tax rates in the world and does actually have charity laws. So that if Operation Hope is raising money in Washington, D.C., this Washington, D.C. lawyer should know about it, and he should be keenly attuned to the dangers of charity fraud. And to take the role, it's very, I'm told, that if you're a lawyer and you're supposed to advise, your primary duty is you're supposed to advise this public charity, which this thing is, Operation Hope. You really don't necessarily want to go then and be a trustee or a director, because you'd rather just be paid or do pro bono work to protect zealously the interests of the entity. The second you also become a director, suddenly you're now potentially in conflict. And your firm's interests, the directorship, this thing. And this was a very bad decision the guy made in 2000. But you know what? He's so stubborn. He said, I made a stupid ass decision in 2000. I'm going to stick with it. I want to bury myself. I want to do this for 19 years in a row.
Yeah.
So I'm that stubborn.
Always like George W., uninformed, unintelligent, but decisive.
Exactly. Decision points. The name of his book. Anyway, so this is now the description from his firm saying, I cut out a bunch of stuff, but he's head of the firm's government strategies practice, this guy. All right, so he's somebody who's thinking through how can this law firm, in theory, serve governments, but in practice, what does that mean? Make money off of governments. How do you get government contracts? How do you And he says here he was an assistant U.S. attorney in D.C., so Joe DeGenova might know about him, right? Because he was the U.S. attorney. And he received a special commendation from various people. It doesn't say it here, but he received a special award for protecting the integrity of the IRS. This is a noble man.
Who gave that award? The IRS?
The guy who gave it to him, it will be revealed in the final slide.
Okay.
Because we have to look at the context as well. So it says here in his firm's website. Now his firm is a for-profit activity, and lawyers, you're members of the bar. It brags as part of his deep commitment to pro bono activity. Steve has represented Operation Hope, a financial literacy group, for the last decade. This is what it says on his website right now. Okay. The other thing that Steve did, somehow, is he has represented Michael Cohen.
Oh.
And let's pull up this link here. Through 2019.
Well, certainly.
The infamous Michael Cohen.
Yeah, I don't know, wants to open everything up there for some reason.
Yeah.
There he is,
Yeah.
law.com, New York law.
More than 1 million of the 1.9 million, I had the numbers wrong, in legal fees is owed to this, and there he is. That's Stephen Ryan right there. This is an article from August 6, 2019.
They all look very happy to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're unpaid. But, very interesting to me that this fellow would, in theory, try to zealously protect Operation Hope and go from that to charging Michael Cohen $1 million for trying to rat out Trump.
Charged him $1 million?
McDermott, Will, and Emery $1 million, all in 1.9. This is what Cohen was trying to do is get the money back, and I think the article, you can't see the whole article, I don't believe, without subscribing. But yeah, it says 3.8 million in total legal fees, back taxes, and criminal penalties.
That's really a lot.
Yeah. So, all right, let's then go into the next page, and let's look at this a bit more carefully. Okay. So, remember I told you that this guy, Steve Ryan, won a prize from the IRS for protecting zealously the
Never heard of that before.
Well, sure. So May 5th, it turns out, 2015, is when Peter Schweitzer's excellent book, Clinton Cash, is published, right? May 5th, 2015. 2 weeks later, Marsha Blackburn and a bunch of others send a letter to the IRS, say, you have to investigate the Clinton Foundation. The book is out, they've had a chance to read it, people are yattering on, including me. And they say, okay, we want you to do this. And I left out this, but
Put that in the pile of things to
even
ignore.
even worse. John Koskinen, then the head of the IRS, dissed Marsha Blackburn. They basically, didn't respond to the letter and then sent, one of those letters you get back, dear applicant, thank you for your support of the IRS, go pound sand. I mean, it was really not the way you should, and it was very bad, and he got in trouble for it.
Isn't she a senator?
Now she's the senator. But back then she was in the House of Representatives. So,
And what's up with John Koskinen? What is he
well,
doing?
doesn't mean go through this first?
Sure.
Okay. So the issue here, and my central premise all along, something that I think Peter Schweitzer might have developed more than he did, and something I am developing in the book I'm working on, my central thesis is you should not take the email scandal and separate it from the Clinton Foundation. They are one and the same thing. The reason Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton did not want, while Hillary was Secretary of State, to send all of their emails and have their staff send all of their emails on government servers is they needed to have the ability to negotiate with these donors who were getting stuff out of the State Department. They needed to have, these are complex projects. You can't just have a meeting where you say, well, let's not take any notes unless, no, if I'm going to give $25 million, or in the case of Juster, $145 million to your freaking foundation, I want my pound of flesh. I want to know that when I go into Africa and I want a mining project done in Congo, you're going to let that sail through, or you're going to give me IFC aid. So there should have been a lot of email here. And there is a lot of email here. And the point is that though the IRS stiff-armed Marsha Blackburn and impeded the ability of the FBI, alongside of Justice, impeded the ability of the FBI to go into the Clinton Foundation, the FBI was dragged kicking and screaming into the business of investigating Hillary Clinton, in quotes, investigating Hillary Clinton's email situation beginning the 10th of July 2015. By the 10th of January 2016, the State Department guy we talked about in the last show comes in and says, hey, here are the goods. Look at this. You know, it wasn't some guy who wears his dress uniform, as happened yesterday, saying, you know, I'm unhappy with the way the translation of the call happened. It wasn't that guy. It was a senior career person saying, I have witnessed and complained about multiple times the gross mishandling of all classified information being handled by Hillary Clinton and her team, and you need to do something about this, Comey. You've got to do something about it, and I have the goods. I want to give them to you. Comey says, oh, no way. So I then don't pull up this link. I then put up this thing really attacking the Clinton Foundation that gets a lot of attention. And on the 17th of June, 2016, we learn why Steve Ryan gets his award for protecting the integrity of the IRS. Here you see, if you pull that link. And remember, this is right in the thick of things. 17th of June 2016 is just when Crossfire Hurricane's really accelerating. It's just when the plot to get Trumpy is taking off. And this guy, Ryan, says that the targeting of John Koskinen is misguided. Right? John Koskinen, who dissed Marsha Blackburn, John Koskinen, who is, you know, overtopped the IRS in a senior role, making sure that the Tea Party got buried in 2009, 10, and afterwards. This guy gets up and criticizes Marsha Blackburn's committee over the question of voting to censure John Koskinen. So this guy, his big name, his big law firm, he does that, and that's, I believe, why he got lauded by the IRS. John Koskinen said, you know, I can think of no other selfless thing to do than to thank somebody who was a useful foil in getting the idiotic lamestream media not to notice what was really going on here, to lend his firm's name and his personal name to the idea that it's wrong to criticize the IRS for failing to try to root out the unequal treatment in which Tea Party people were abused and the Clintons were let off. That guy is the chief counsel for Operation Hope. It still is. I mean, you look at this, and Michael Cohen, you remember what happened to him when they decided that they could use Cohen to get to Trump. They busted through the attorney-client privilege. They used that to get all kinds of personal communications. They hoped that through that they would find stuff to bust Trump. The same sort of thing should happen with this dude, in my opinion, right? I mean, what the hell has he been doing or not doing with Operation Hope since the beginning of time on all this?
Do you want to see an insane-looking picture of John Koskinen?
Yeah.
There he is.
A Yale Law School graduate.
I mean, I don't know what's going on with this guy, but...
Yeah, that's the kind of picture you do not want to think about as you're trying to go to sleep.
But he looks like he's testifying before Congress, and he's taking, like, joke selfies. It's pretty weird.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I made this pasta myself. Trust me, the sauce is fantastic. But it looks like rotting dead animals.
Yeah, it's just like a very weird guy to me.
So this guy, you know, deflects. He's useful in deflecting. And then Marsha Blackburn says, wait a minute. You know, no. I want to know what's going on with this IRS. And this is, again, after Dopey James has cleared Hillary Clinton, a week or so after that. I published more details on Zero Hedge. And it really, the calls really mount September 12th to impeach the IRS commissioner. Okay, and this guy, Steve Ryan, his comments are Exhibit A, saying, no, that would be a wrong thing to do. This creature of Washington, D.C. I mean, after all, think of what he's done for Operation Hope. We wouldn't have Operation Hope if it weren't for Steve Ryan and the wise oversight of John Koskinen at the IRS. I mean, it's just amazing to me. And then through all this, to top it all off, one story that has got to be told, and I know that your True Pundit friend and others were early on the whole issue of why did we not actually look through Abedin's emails?
The laptop.
Right, the laptop. This idea that, well, you know, in the case of Donald Trump, we're going after his entire campaign and anyone connected with Donald Trump for Russian collusion, which leads us to the fact that Paul Manafort overpays for suits and other landscaping services at his various homes, He's in solitary confinement. He's in prison quickly.
Those both actually sound like mob payoffs, but
Whatever. I'm just saying. And I'm not justifying Manafort. But if the principle is that a Mueller can be asked to focus on Russian collusion, but instead get Manafort for something that happened going back to 2004 when the Clinton Foundation was illegally...
They should certainly be able to get to this guy.
Right, and the Clinton Foundation. I mean, they should really be able to, lawfully. I'm not proposing that you should go into Stephen Ryan's home at 4 o'clock in the morning with however many FBI agents. But, you know, to me, there are some large, open questions here. And disparate. I'm a big believer in studying contrast. I don't know necessarily what's right and wrong in one case. But you give me 2 or 3 cases in an area, and I see Dopey James lets Hillary Clinton off, and all her team off, and these immunity agreements and all these other things, and then the same week starts to persecute a grandmother, an African-American grandmother, for like $1 million. Let the Clinton Foundation off for $3 billion. And then you allow Bill and Hillary and Ira Magaziner to go around the world, claiming that they have this initiative and that foundation, this and that. There's no audit, there's no nothing, and you don't go after Operation Hope. I mean, how do you explain this?
They don't. It's quite simple.
And then you would think that at this stage in Steve Ryan's life, I don't know how old he is. I guess he's in his late 60s, early 70s. He's at a stage in his life where he should be thinking about his legacy and his family and all this kind of stuff. And I would have thought that a John Durham type, paying a visit to, if you're going to go after Corinne Brown over less than $1 million fraud, this Operation Hope is in the tens of millions of known fraud, that you should be paying a visit to this former U.S. attorney, assistant U.S. attorney, and you should be saying, listen, dude, I know you didn't get paid much by John Hope Bryant, but you've been involved in this for 19 years, and what did you actually do? How much of this did you check? Did you know that this guy Hope was doing all this stuff around the world? Did you ever check to see if he was making money off his side business? Yeah, I got to go now.
I don't know you.
I've got my Will and Hill benefit to go for. Yeah. So
there we are.
There we are, almost on time.
Well, it's always on time, Charles. You remember Fast Times in Ridgemont High, Mr. Hand? This is our time.
Slow times.
Will I pass this class? I don't know. There is one more important thing I wanted to bring to your attention.
Sure.
I know there's sometimes people who think that I kind of come to these conclusions out of thin air, and I, cling to conspiracy theories and whatnot. Jeffrey Epstein, back in the news, Michael Baden said that he was strangled. I still don't believe that. Do we have a DNA test that tells us that he had a dead body that was strangled? Are we sure it's Epstein? I'm not even sure. There was this question about operating a 727, a Boeing 727, manufactured in 1969. I'm very well aware that aircraft age is determined in the number of cycles where it goes to altitude and comes back down. It's got to do with the fuselage, pressurization, etc. And I know that 30-year-old aircraft are good buys for millionaires and billionaires. But a 50-year-old aircraft is an anomaly, according to 2 pilots I spoke to and an aircraft, broker, dealt in military and commercial aircraft. They were all surprised by the 727, and I felt that there had to be something unique about the 727 that made it desirable. And I found what that is thanks to the crowdsourcing process. The 727 had a unique rear door that was intended to lower the stairs so that people could walk out the rear of it onto the tarmac. This, incidentally, I think is a JPATS plane right here, which will be of interest to David Hawkins. But because of the location of the engines and this door, you can skydive out of it. You can drop guided munitions out the back of it.
And
unwanted cargo could be dumped in the middle of the ocean between the United States and Africa, where it would never be found again. But that could not be easily added to another jet. And if there are jets on the wings, as 737s have, and most modern aircraft have, you can't do that because the jet wash would kill you on the way out the back. So I suspect that people that operate 727s maybe want to drop stuff out of them.
It could be. Yeah, it could be. That was a horrible second date. See ya.
Yeah, it's right there in the back. Get a little further back. Just keep going. But anyway, Charles, that's the show for today. People who are coming in late and are a little surprised to see us on a Wednesday, because of the raising temperature, the accelerating tempo, Charles has decided he needs to continue closing in. You know, Charles, there were some malicious social engineers who made a bunch of pointless videos criticizing you that the closing in was taking too long.
Well, it's a big problem. I mean, honestly, it's like, I love this argument that the other side's using, the pro-fraud party. It shouldn't be D and R, it should be F. You're fraud. I'm a fraudster. I mean, think of me as a fraudster. That's what I am. You're a fraudster. You know, it's a great thing. Look at how wealthy Bill is and Hillary.
Yeah.
But when you hear the other side say that it is outrageous to target a former presidential candidate for it's outrageous to do that. Well, it's outrageous to run the state of Arkansas as governor as a criminal enterprise and then get elected president by some miracle with Ross Perot helping. And then the first thing you do is you fire all sitting U.S. attorneys. That's outrageous.
Nobody said anything about that.
They did actually say
did
that.
they?
Yeah. But that's outrageous because you were a defendant. And it's outrageous to have the Clinton body count and nobody actually check into it. It's outrageous to have all these suspicious people around the Clintons who either are still dead or are very rich for no apparent good reason. I mean, that's outrageous. And the fact that somebody with that check, I mean, you know, maybe Al Capone would still be alive, and he'd be pretty old today, but I mean, he wouldn't have gone to jail if he'd run for president. I mean, that's the message, you know.
Well, I think Al Capone has been cloned, resurrected, and he's gone trans, and he identifies as Hillary Clinton. Yeah. The last thing I want to say, Charles, we do have an assignment for the crowd. We need a Jedi Commander name for Obi-Wan Kenobi here. If he's going to play with the Star Wars toys, you know, he's got to have some sort of appropriate name.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I would I mean, I'm obviously not a fashion expert, but I would say that anybody who lives in Virginia, or where he does, is by definition not cool because you sort of dress like Steve Jobs with, you know, distressed blue jeans and these funny shoes with the white things and this weird Steve Jobs sweater and you're 6'8" or however tall he is. Not cool. And the other thing I would say, I just need to apologize to you, Jason, actually, because in the last broadcast, I had read a story that said that dog wasn't hurt.
But he was hurt.
He was hurt, and you were right. So.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You know what I'm noticing as I look at this? Look at how James Comey seems to really like birds. Look at this. He's got bird cages, bird feeders.
Bird brain.
Yeah, exactly. It's a nice house.
Well, he's made tens of millions of dollars.
Well, he's rubbing it in everybody's face right there.
Yeah, he's not worried about anything. He's going to New Zealand if Trump gets reelected. I mean, we should really hold these celebrities who say they're moving. Remember the ones who are going to move to Canada and.
I think Canada should tell them, hey, wait a minute, who the hell do you think you are? You can't just move here. We don't want you.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Charles, another great episode of Closing In. I, for one, recognize that you can't just do it in a weekend. It takes a little time. Yeah. And I want to thank everybody who's been with us all along. We'll keep getting the word out that Wednesdays have been reactivated, and I hope that people will continue to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We're going to have a really special broadcast of the intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp tomorrow night. We've got some special guests I don't want to reveal just yet, but you don't want to miss this. I am mindful of the fact that tomorrow is the last day of the month, and there's this really vexing problem where credit card churn or whatever it is, there's usually a huge drop in sponsorship at the end of the month. So I'm trying to do things to create a little sponsorship drive, and hopefully people will get in there. So thanks to everybody who's already a sponsor, and if you're not, I hope you will become one. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you,
I'll
Jason.
see everybody tomorrow.